Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Freddy and I have taken a bit of break from Booktube for a short while, but now I'm back. So I actually intended to make this Q&A video last week, but then something came up these couple of weeks, and I was, making videos seems to be something that was I wouldn't call it impossible, but maybe almost impossible because of all the things that were happening around that time. But today is a Saturday. It's a pleasant weekend, and I think that I would like to just start with this video. And thank you so much for all of your responses for my previous video, which was the Q&A called announcement video. I'm not sure how long this video is going to be. I have some kind of like a rough framework of what I want to say for each of those questions, but I'm not sure what would happen when the words start pouring out of my mouth, because sometimes things are not so predictable. So let's just start with the first question. This one is by, I'm going to start with the oldest questions first, and then I will go all the way to the newest one. So the first one is by Kim from middle of the book March. First, yay, I love your channel, Freddy. I've been curious, what is the biggest difference in English language literature versus Malaysian language literature? And next question, is it easy for you to buy books in English near you? So for the first question, I would say that with English language literature, the biggest difference when compared to Malaysian language literature, and I would assume that the language is more on Malay, would be the scope. So because with English language literature you have works that were written by authors coming from all sorts of places. The Anglosphere is a very big place. It covers like big area of lands, and so it's really easy to find works that talks about different kinds of experience, different levels of experience. There's certainly more variety in English language literature compared to Malay or Malaysian language literature. Now for Malay language literature, not only the scope is a little bit smaller because it tends to get restricted to only experiences that were kind of being told, that kind of happen within the, if not only in the Malaysian landscape, then at most I would say it covers the Malay archipelago landscape. You may find works that kind of touches upon lives in foreign lands, but then those are not something that you would find really widespread. And so yeah, scope is definitely one of the biggest differences. And another thing is definitely perception. I think that when it comes to English language literature, there are certain things that because of the fact that you have so much experience being represented in English language literature, they are being perceived in a totally different light compared to when those same exact experience are being represented in a Malaysian language literature. And just to give you an example, I would think that, okay, to represent the LGBT community in a English language literature, it's really easy to just represent LGBT community as a positive thing. You can easily use the word gay, for example, and it can come off as something that is positive. And when you compare that with Malay language literature, from my experience so far, it's kind of it's quite difficult to find a piece of writing that is in Malay and uses the word gay, but use it in a positive light. So there's this kind of like inherent wrongness to that word whenever it is being used in the context of a Malay language writing. So yeah, perception is definitely something that is really important when it comes to these two language. And so yeah, those are some of the differences that I would identify as quite big. That's a long response for the first question. The next one is it easy for you to buy books in English near you? It depends on where I live. I used to live in smaller towns. At those places, it was much more difficult because there were no big retail chain stores. And I think right now there aren't any over there. But if you live in a big city, you have plenty of choices. You have plenty of places where you can buy books. Of course, the retail chain. You also have used bookstores. Used bookstores tend to pop up in bigger cities because I would assume there are more customers in bigger cities, and people who read books tend to be more concentrated in bigger cities. So right now I'm actually living in a big city, fairly big city, and it's easy for me to get books. I can go to the bookstore if I want to, or I can actually just order any books, and the books can just arrive real easily because usually I tend to order books from bookstores that operates in the Malaysian peninsula. So they arrive very fast, 3 to 5 days, can get the books. Then last time when I used to live in East Malaysia, which is kind of like at a totally different place, separated by a body of water, the delivery tends to take a while, and because I live in a smaller city, smaller town, sometimes the delivery is not so efficient as how it is in a big city. So I hope that answers your question. So the next question is by Remembered Reads. Happy New Year. Here's a question for the channel anniversary. What have been your best, worst, funniest, and strangest experiences since joining Booktube? So this is like a one question, but 4 sub-questions. My best experience. Because I'm really new, all of these questions I would address them from the perspective of someone who is like super new. My best experience actually just kind of like happened a few months after I joined Booktube, and that was the time when Shawn the Book Maniac actually invited me to have some Zoom chat. 2 Zoom chats, in fact. One is actually about just my kind of like my reading preference and all that, just a very casual Zoom chat about reading. And another Zoom chat was about this short story written by a Filipino writer, and that was done because of the Asian Readathon that was happening in May. And at that time, my subscriber count was actually like just, I think it was still in 2 digits. So it was just kind of like, I was still at the very, very early stage of my Booktube life. And the next one would be my worst experience. I so far have not really encountered any experience that I would consider as bad. I guess for a new booktuber or a new YouTuber, one bad experience would probably when you see that your subscriber count, when it's still low and then suddenly you're losing people and the number just got a little bit low, like it gotten lower by like what, 1 or 2 subscribers, and you kind of like start to wonder why that happened. You are filled with self-doubts, and I think I got over that right now, so it does not bother me so much anymore. But as far as bad experiences go, that would be the bad experience that I would use to answer this question, because I don't have anything else that was really bad, because most of the things that I experienced here have been quite good, quite positive. And Funniest and Strangest, I think I'm gonna combine these two, and also relates to kind of like YouTubing and booktubing in general. One mind-boggling thing that I received was, of course, spam comments. And I used to receive like spam comments that were asking me to kind of like collaborate and use free music or whatever. Of course, I wasn't interested. And but those were the earlier spam comments that I got. And then there seems to be kind of like a new phase of spam comments coming in, and those have a little bit more amorous flavor to them. The profile pictures would contain like scantily clad individuals, and the comments would be something that sounds kind of like, "Do you love me?" or "I love you," or something like that. And that was really perplexing. It was also a little bit disappointing, because whenever you have like notifications about a new comment, right, and you were expecting it coming from someone who watched your video and engaged with it, and so you were expecting some comments with a bit more substance, but then you end up seeing "I love yous" in the comments, and you are like really disappointed. Usually you don't get really disappointed with "I love yous," right? But then you know, some of those comments would be like, "Do you love me?" And then it just kind of made me, you know, I had this temptation to just kind of answer those comments with, "Do you love me? Did you like my video? Did you subscribe to my channel? Did you share my video? Because if you don't do any of those, then you don't really love me after all. So yeah, maybe you could just vamoose." And of course I didn't do any of that, because I don't know, I just felt kind of uncomfortable interacting with those spammers. But yeah, I've seen some people interacting with those spammers, but they don't get any interaction back. But it was really amusing, you know. The next question is by Katja Weinert. If you could rewrite a book series, which would it be? Book or series, which would it be, and what changes would you make? And the second question would be, what are your top non-booktube channels on YouTube? The first question, if I could rewrite a book, I would probably rewrite, and this assumes that I am a good writer, I would probably rewrite Kiran Desai's The Inheritance of Loss, because I think that that book was kind of incomplete. It felt like I wouldn't say first draft, that's too mean. I would probably say that it looks a bit like a, I don't know, 8th, 9th, 10th draft, because there was something that you could certainly explore more inside that book. Many things in that book felt really superficial. The way that the book talks about the history of India in the 1970s and the 80s, and the racial relations and the social and political climate that happened at the time, and immigration, and the sense of alienation, and you know, all those things. There are so many things, but that book was just kind of like this thick. So I don't think it's enough. That warrants a more epic length, and certainly warrants more character development. But instead, what you get was you have an ensemble cast of characters, but then most of them are just kind of like standing there doing nothing, and the dialogues were horrible, and some of the chapters was kind of like listicles. So I definitely would want to change that. Maybe change it into something that looks a little bit more Dickensian, both in tone and in style and in substance. of course, that assumes I have to be a good, I have to be a good writer in order to do that, to make something a bit more Dickensian. So, yeah, I would love a Dickensian reinterpretation of The Inheritance of Loss. And second one, my top non-booktube channels on YouTube. I've some I would just like to share. I really like watching ContraPoints because her videos are just so well done. So basically, ContraPoints is a channel by Natalie Wynn, and it is a kind of like a social commentary channel that talks a lot about issues, especially the ones related to transgender issues. I also like SimGM Productions, which is basically just a parody video channel that was done by using the Sims models, and it typically parodies Hollywood people, and also the Kardashians especially. And then I also like Casually Comics, which is a kind of like a comic book commentary video by Sasha Woods, who talks about random things in comics, and most of the time the things that she talks about are about certain history in comics, certain characters in comics are a little bit more obscure. Next question is by Lisa Lehigh. Happy New Year question. After being on Booktube for the past year, have you noticed any changes to your reading, quantity, comprehension, choices, etc.? If yes, what has been the biggest change? By the way, I like your channel name and I can relate. Thank you. So for the question, what has been the biggest change? First of all, yes, I have noticed a significant change in the way I read, and I would say the biggest change would definitely be the introduction of structure into my reading life. Basically, before this, my reading tends to be, first of all, I used to be an exclusively monogamous reader, and I would just read whenever I want to read. Both of those things were good and okay things to do, by the way. But after I joined Booktube, because I wanted to try to read more, and my TBR has gotten a little bit expanded, I've been trying to read more books at a single time. So I became a more polygamous reader, and I started to introduce some structure in my reading life, whereby I would kind of like set aside certain time to read, and but not being too rigid about that. Basically, there are times that I feel like I could read, but before this I might not read. During those times, I would try to just read something, and if reading helps, if reading works at the time, I would just continue reading. If reading does not work, I would stop. But the effect was kind of big, because I was able to get a little bit more reading done compared to before that, which was kind of nice. So the next question is by Booksenki, and this one is Happy New Year and Booktube Anniversary. My question: do you feel like you have made good friends through Booktube? And the answer is, of course, yes. I've made some good friends on Booktube, and that's really surprising, because it was not something that I really expected when I started booktubing. One of the nice bonus that you get from Booktube. And next question, Biola Mairi, is that how you pronounce it? Happy New Year and happy Booktube Anniversary. What is your favorite Malaysian book, and why is it your favorite? My favorite Malaysian book, I've not read many Malaysian books. Some of the Malaysian books that I used to read before this were the books that I read at school, which I didn't love. But one book that I love was something I read a few years ago, and that's, of course, The Garden of Evening Mist by Twan. I enjoyed that book because it kind of gave me this totally different interpretation or experience when it comes to the history surrounding the time in Malaysian history that relates to the Malayan emergency, and some time that happened after the Japanese occupation. And I remember when I was in secondary school, we used to study these things in history class. And the thing about our history subjects, at school at the time, it was mostly black and white. You have villains versus heroes. So you have the good guys and the bad guys. So things were kind of just boring, black and white at the time. There was little room for kind of like multiple interpretation of histories. So when I read this book, and all of those sides, they were kind of being portrayed as humans, even though you know that certain characters are bad, certain characters are good, but you see them as humans, and that was something that I appreciated. It was kind of like my takeaway from that book. Aside from its like really gorgeous prose, I had this like new appreciation towards the history when it comes to my own country's history. So that was great. It had a really profound effect, and it was actually one of the books that changed my mind about how I see Malaysian books in general. And next question is by Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. Happy anniversary, congratulations. What's the most surprising thing you've learned since joining Booktube? When I look at my analytics, and I noticed that some of my biggest, some of the videos that have the most view counts are actually single book reviews, which was really interesting. What's even more surprising was that my most watched video was my video on Hotel du Lac by Anita Brookner. And I was just kind of imagining what people experience when watching that video, because that video was actually filled with spoilers. I did put spoilers on the thumbnail, but yeah, it would probably be kind of dangerous to watch that if you have not read the book, because that book has some juicy stuff going on. But then, yeah, that was really surprising. My top video was about Hotel du Lac. And another thing that was less surprising but still kind of nice to see was that I think my top 5 videos were all single book reviews. My takeaway from that, it kind of made me feel more motivated to make single book videos, and I'm certainly going to do more single book reviews this year. And I have some ideas now. I think I'm gonna make one for the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. That one was awesome. Then next question is by That's So Po. She has a few questions. What are your favorite foods? Is the artwork on your walls drawn by you? And introduce us to your stuffed animals. The first question, what are my favorite foods? It's gonna be a long list, but I have some foods that I just considered my all-time favorites. I really love biryani rice. I especially love the Hyderabadi variants because I really love the taste of the onions. I really love gulab jamun. It's just really awesome. It's kind of like this fried flour balls dipped in rose flavored syrup. It's just awesome. And I really like water spinach, or you can also call it water convolvulus or kangkong, which is a kind of vegetable that is really cheap in my country, and it's really versatile. You can stir fry it with different kinds of condiments. You can put it in like fried rice. You can make soup out of it. It's just really great. It's a nice vegetable, and I think really filled with great fibers for your bowels as well. I like raspberry ripple ice cream. I like oh yeah, there's this kind of instant noodle that is called mee goreng. which literally translated as fried noodle, but it's not exactly fried. It's just like dried, soupless instant noodle that is quite widespread in here in Malaysia, and also it kind of originates in Indonesia as well. This kind of fried noodle, no, this kind of instant noodle is just really, really awesome. I think it's kind of like food of the gods. So yeah, next one is the artwork on your walls drawn by you? I have some artworks that might have popped up in some of my videos. Not all of them were drawn by me. This one was drawn by me before when I was in my phase, a bit more creative phase. I was dabbling with visual arts, and I still have my art supplies right now. And this one was actually drawn by my sister, painted by my sister when she came to visit me one day, and she was like, she saw my art supplies and she just took them and then made something and introduced us to your stuffed animals. Most of my stuffed animals were actually from claw machines. So these are the ones that are coming from the claw machines. I have 4 of them. And the largest one was actually something that I got from a claw machine, a slightly different variants where you have to snip the rope. And so we have to, and basically the stuffed animal was hanging from the rope and you have to snip it. And we have to try it a few times because each successful try will only snip a portion of the rope. The string, not a rope, string. But only a bit of it is cut. So you have to cut it a few times. And this claw machine was actually at a mall. I was going out with my friend at the time, so we managed to got the stuffed animals after so many tries. And then afterwards we were just kind of walking around the mall, and I was holding this big stuffed animal. And so we went to like restaurants, shops, supermarkets with me holding these stuffed animals. And then I kind of took a picture in front of a stack of baby food with the brand name Lil Freddy, while holding this stuffed animal. And I think that picture was awesome. I have also one that was gifted to my sister. That kind of, the gift just kind of came randomly one day, and it's a green teddy bear. So the next question is by Hemavudan Vasiyungal. Have you ever had an argument with someone who didn't like a book you did? And the answer is no. I've never had any argument when it comes to disagreements about books or our opinions about books, at least with people that I'm talking about books with, because I guess because all of the people that I've been talking about books with were kind of mature people, level-headed people, and I guess we just don't see any reason to argue about why that book has to be loved, why that book has to be hated. I've never experienced that. Next one is probably not exactly a question. This one is by Gagging for Lit, but it has question marks over there. It's about name change, actually my channel name change. Not sure what I could suggest for a name change for you. I like your current one. Maybe think of some words that describe your own channel as you think of it, and then I could suggest some names. You don't have to, of course. Well, I don't have to, but I kind of want to. Okay, my channel. What can I say about my channel? Marginally funny. All over the place. Next one is by Skyly Dandling about the books. My question for you is to hear a bit more about your development as a reader and the bookish landscape in Malaysia. Are you unusual in your reading interest as a young person there, or is this what the Malaysian education system promotes? Few sub-questions here. The first one is my development as a reader. Well, I actually started out just mainly reading Malay books. And then that was when I was less younger than 10 years old, around that time when I was in primary school. And then when I got to secondary school, that was 13 years and above, I started to get into middle grade English books. I was just kind of reading those casually. And I think around that time I got introduced to abridged classics by my parents, because those were available in like really, really cheap price, 10 ringgit per book or less. And then I discovered that there were these like Green Penguins edition, which were really, really cheap, but had like really, really horrible cover with actually kind of poor binding as well. They fall apart really easily, but they were really cheap. And these classics were kind of like original unabridged versions. And so I started kind of reading this book as well when I was really young. And of course, naturally at that time, I couldn't understand everything in that book, in those books. So those were the kind of like the first time I read Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters, Virginia Woolf, and it was kind of fun. But then when I got to college, or sometimes before college in my preparatory school, I started to get into a little bit more on modern classics, and so my taste got a little bit more expensive at the time, because I wasn't really aware of the existence of used booksellers. And it was in college that I really got this new influence in my reading, because I started to expand my reading scope. I started to read more Russian literature. I started to read more Latin American literature. Now, the bookish landscape in Malaysia, I wouldn't consider Malaysia as a particularly bookish place. There are some attitudes towards book readers, depending on person, of course, but it really ranged from kind of seeing book readers as someone who knows stuff, who likes to learn, to opinions on like book readers being elitist, or book readers being people who are out of touch. So I kind of start to ignore all of those perception on how book readers are seen here in Malaysia. And of course, I start to meet with more people who like reading books as well. Social media helps in that. And that has been a really positive development for me when it comes to my my development as a reader here in my own country. And am I unusual in my reading interests as a young person here? Probably, because most of my peers, they have slightly different tastes than I have, which is kind of like one of the reasons why I started a Booktube channel, because I just really wanted to talk about certain books that I read, but then I just didn't have any outlet to talk about those, because I mainly read backlisted books, modern classics, those kind of stuff, and then many of my peers tend to read stuff like new releases, popular fiction. But again, I have also kind of learned that in Bookstagram there are also people who are of my age who kind of read like similar books that I read, who have like really similar tastes, and that's actually really fascinating. And is this what the Malaysian education system promotes? I've not experienced the Malaysian education system and at the tertiary level. I've only gotten until the secondary level, and then my university was I attended in the United States, so that part of my education changed my reading life trajectory. But for my secondary school life, I think that my taste wouldn't exactly align with the things that we would study there. I don't think many of the books that I'm reading right now would be something that anyone at the education ministry would be so keen on introducing to secondary school kids in Malaysia, because they tend to have subjects that are a little bit more, that are so-called sensitive to the society here, which is it's complicated. I'm not going to talk more about that in this video, but I have kind of strayed far from the kinds of stuff we were expected to read in secondary school, which is, I think, good. I'm not sure how the university in Malaysia is like. I think it's a little bit more open as well. The next question is by Jyotsna, Bookscapades. 3 questions. Which 3 fictional characters would you invite over for dinner? And this is like really random. I would probably invite characters from the Shipping News by Annie Proulx. I would probably invite Coil, because he seems like a really cool guy. I would probably invite I'm not sure if this considers it as 3 fictional characters, but to round up to 3, I would probably invite Lena and Elena from My Brilliant Friend series, and let's just consider them as one unit. And because I happen to be rich and I have a lot of food, and I'm going to invite one more, and that is Z from a Concise Chinese English Dictionary for Lovers. Why would I invite these characters together? Because I really like things that are random, because they usually turn out really absurd, and I love absurd things. So I just can't wait to see kind of like what would be the interaction between these characters with one another. So I want to know how these characters are going to kind of like mesh up with one another, because right now I can't really imagine what could possibly be the outcome. I mean, of course there might be like awkward silences, and we will all just be reading. No, we will all be eating our food in silence. Which is okay, I guess. I don't mind silence. But if they happen to talk to one another, I wonder what the discussions would be. It's like they're so different. The next one is, how do I make time for reading while doing a full-time job? Well, the thing is, sometimes after I got back from work, especially when I got home a little bit late, I don't read at all. Hence my channel name, Sluggish Reader. But yeah, when it comes to doing a full-time job while finding time to read, I think it really depends on how you choose the time to read, if you really want to make time to read, how important is reading to you. If you find that reading is really important, then you've gotta have to have a structure. For me, it's mildly important. It's not like the top of my list. So I have like a very, very flexible kind of like a structure to it. I would try to read a little bit, maybe 1 chapter or less if I couldn't at night. I would try to read in the morning if I wake up early enough to read. And then I would probably try to read also on lunch break if I had the energy to do that. Of course, in the weekend I would actually go on a kind of like reading sprint, because that's kind of like the only time I have this the only opportunity where I can read as much as I want to. So yeah. And how do you read while eating blue rice? Is it, does it pertain to only blue rice or any other food also? I am a messy eater and can never do this. Well, I have my secret, and you're probably gonna get your mind blown by this, but I actually have never read while eating blue rice. Yeah, it's kind of difficult for me to eat and read at the same time. I have some of my books stained by curry, so it was really traumatizing. Yeah. My copy of A Little Life was stained by curry before I even read it, and it was already, I already had trauma before getting into that book, so, And also another question is, do you read out of your comfort zone? If yes, which genre? Out of my comfort zone, I've started a little bit on romance, started a little bit on science fiction as well, like books that you would consider as hard science fiction, and also maybe this year I am interested to read more non-fiction. That is certainly out of my comfort zone. Not to say that I've never read any non-fiction before, but my fiction count is much, much, much bigger than non-fiction. Next question is by MC. Happy New Year and happy Booktube Anniversary. For the Q&A, did you enjoy reading right from childhood, or was reading for pleasure something you discovered when you were older? I enjoyed reading for pleasure since I was a child. Basically, my mother, my aunt, and my sister, all of them just kind of read for pleasure almost a lot back then when I was a child. My aunt especially, and my mom also. My aunt really loves to read these Malay romance novels, and I guess when you kind of grow up under that kind of circumstances, you slowly just kind of absorb some of those habits. And I read some of those Malay romance novels also, and some of them were kind of good, and it just made you feel a little bit more comfortable when it comes to the idea of reading for pleasure. And then my mother also does that. She also reads, she also read the Malay novels, and my sister also started reading. Of course, now everyone is busy, so I think they've been reading less. I think my aunt still reads some of those Malay novels as well. But yeah, those definitely had an effect on me when I was a child, so it certainly started from childhood. And so the last question is by Kirsten, from Kirsten0929. Hope I'm not too late with my question. If you were being sent away to a desert island and could only take one book with you, what would it be? To a desert island. I would take Fear of Flying by Erica Jong. So those are the questions for this Q&A, and thank you to everybody who has sent their questions. I really enjoyed reading all of these. I'll see you again in a different video. Until then, take care, thanks for watching, and have a great one. Bye bye.